Testing. Testing.
I'd like to call this meeting, the second trim hearing to order. Brian, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And welcome to the Juvenile Welfare Board's final public hearing for the consideration and adoption of the FY24 millage rates and budget. This public hearing is being held in accordance with Chapter 200 of the Florida statute. First action, item 2A, presentation of the FY24 final millage rate. I will ask Laura Brock to proceed with the proposed FY24 final millage rate portion of her presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for attending our final trim hearing meeting. As you know, you met on September 6th to review the initial trim hearing meeting. A lot of this information is very repetitive on what we discussed then, so I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but there are some things that we are required to disclose and discuss with you today. So, if I can use this thing, I'll let you do it. So the budget timeline, we talked about this, Diana did at the September 6th meeting. Today is the 20th for the second public hearing, and then the budget book will be effective on October 1. So our fiscal year being September 30. So I will have, at the October meeting, we will print a full budget book for you, and we'll have that at your desks at the October meeting. For those of you who like to flip through it and refer to it on a regular basis, some of you may choose to leave it at your desk, whatever floats your boat. Okay, so the millage rate history, we had also talked about how long we've had the millage rate that we've had, and there were some questions that were asked about how far back did this go, but we are looking for a reduction in the millage rate again this year. This next slide talked about the ad valorem revenues as well as the fund balance and how we budget the ending fund balance or the surplus from the prior year as a part of our resources for the upcoming budget, and this is just showing the history of what we've had in that regard. The next slide also identified where we had ad valorem revenues and how that's been adjusted for inflation, and you can see it's kind of floated for the last several years. So we're here today to talk about the final millage rate. There has been no changes to this. The property valuation as we see it now is $123.87 billion. It's an 11.76% increase over the previous property valuations. Our proposed millage rate is 0.8250. It does require a two-thirds vote this evening. That is a 7.45% increase or amount greater than the rolled back rate, but it is also a 3.03% reduction in what our millage rate was last year. So we were steady with the millage rate for several years, 10, 13 years. We had a reduced rate last year, and we're reducing the rate again this year, but it is not as low as the rolled back rate. And I know you had a question about the rolled back rate at the last meeting. With the millage rate of 0.8250, that will yield ad valorem revenues for us of approximately $99.1 million. So that would be a $7.6 million increase in the revenues that we received in this past year. Next slide. So the primary purpose of what we're spending this increase. So we will be spending the $7.6 million, which we identified as the additional revenues that we'll get from ad valorem taxes. But in addition to that, we will be spending out of surplus another $12.5 million of surplus monies. That's the budget for the current year. So we've talked about this for many years. Our surpluses have grown, and now we're working towards spending that surplus down. So the combined, how are we spending that money? Well, $3.3 million is for the COLAs or the cost of living adjustments for the programs. Another $2.3 million for the workforce stabilization that we spoke about. The strategically aligned programs that were awarded in 23, that's another $3.5 million. And then finally, the strategic plan that we've implemented and completing that with the turbo babies and the other initiatives, that will account for another $3.36 million in the increase. So at that time, I'll turn it back over to the chair for any additional questions.
This is the public comment or questions portion of the hearing on the millage rate for 2024. Seeing there are no comments or questions from the public at this time, I'd like to hear from the board members. Do any board members have any comments or questions? Seeing none, the board must now consider the resolution to set the final millage rate. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the resolution regarding the FY24 final millage.
Resolution fiscal year 24-03, a resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the final levying of ad valorem taxes for Pinellas County for fiscal year 2024, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 20th, 2023, adopted fiscal year final millage rate following a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065. And whereas the gross taxable value for operating purposes not exempt from taxation within Pinellas County has been certified by the county property appraiser to the Juvenile Welfare Board as $123,868,348,903. Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, that the fiscal year operating millage is 0.8250 mils, which is greater than the rollback rate of 0.7678 mils by 7.45%. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption.
I call for a motion and a second to adopt the FY24 final millage resolution.
So move.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Or no, I'm
Aye.
sorry. I have to ask Julia to contact her or to ask each board member separately. It was quick. I would have tried.
Chair Michael McCurrick,
Yes.
Vice Chair the Honorable Patrice Moore,
Yes.
Bruce Bartlett, Secretary,
Yes.
Mr. Brian Oxt,
Yes.
Miss Kristen Nage,
Yes.
the Honorable Chris Latvala,
Yes.
Superintendent Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
Chief Jim Milligan,
Yes.
the Honorable Salamalu is not here, and then lastly, Miss Melissa Rutland.
Yes.
Seeing that we have all yeses, am I correct, Julie?
We have 9 affirmative votes.
9 affirmative votes.
Yes.
So the motion has passed. Let's move on now to the, I will ask Laura Brock to proceed with the proposed FY24 final budget portion of her presentation.
Thank you. I'm here to report that we have no changes to the budget from the initial first hearing meeting that you had on September 6th. Having said that, we will be approving a budget that would generate $101 million in revenues, broken down between ad valorem revenues and interest earnings. As far as the expenses or the expenditures, these are just the program expenditures. We are budgeting $106 million in program allocations that we'll be funding this year. This is about $11.7 million increase from the prior year. So we're working very feverishly to get those dollars out and get those programs up and running. As far as the breakdown between these programs, when you receive the budget book, you'll see that it's also broken down by program type, by focus area, and by results area, which we elaborate a little bit more on all the programs. But these are the different types, and I think Diana had mentioned at the last meeting how the behavioral health has jumped up as the largest funded type that we are providing. As far as the administrative budget goes, we have a slight increase of about $380,000. We still fall within the 10% target rate, and the current year budget will have a 7.30 administrative rate. The changes in fund balance, as I mentioned earlier, our budget includes the prior year fund balance as a source of revenues for us. We are anticipating at this time that the opening fund balance will be about $56 million. It would be a $2.5 million increase from the beginning fund balance. As you can see, that middle column, if you drop all the way down, we've got a $21 million decrease. That's the anticipation of dipping into all of the different fund balance amounts between the ad valorem revenues and so forth. So if we're successful in not having any lapse, which don't count on that, we will dip into that much accordingly. Other than that, any other questions? I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, this is the public comment or questions portion of the hearing. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, do any of the board members have any comments or questions? Do we have any changes to the budgets from the board members? The board now must consider the resolution, set the final budget. I will ask Beth Houghton to read the resolution regarding the FY24 final budget.
Resolution fiscal year 24-04, a resolution of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2024 and providing for an effective date. Whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, on September 20th, 2023, held a public hearing as required by Florida Statute 200.065, and whereas the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County set forth the appropriations and revenue estimate for the budget for fiscal year 2024 in the amount of $158,024,611. Now therefore be it resolved by the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County, Florida, that the fiscal year 2024 final budget be adopted, and this resolution shall take place immediately upon its adoption, duly adopted at a public hearing this 20th day of September 2023.
Calling for a motion and a second to adopt the FY24 budget resolution.
So move.
I have a motion. I have a second. I'll now ask Julia to call each board member for their vote.
Chair Michael McCurrick,
Yes.
the Honorable Patrice Moore, Vice Chair,
Yes.
Bruce Bartlett, Secretary,
Yes.
Mr. Brian Ongst,
Yes.
Miss Kristen Nage,
Yes.
the Honorable Chris Latvala,
Yes.
Miss Superintendent Kevin Hendrick,
Yes.
Chief Jim Milligan,
Yes.
and Miss Melissa Rutland.
Yes.
We have 9 affirmative votes.
Having 9 affirmative votes, the motion has passed. With that, unless the board members have any further comments, this concludes the final public hearing for the FY24 millage and budget. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Meeting's adjourned. All right. Chris, are you going to be able to go to the next meeting?
I'm using this as the reason why I can't make it.
Okay.
So if you go,
I have no option to go. I'm the chair. I'm a little hard doing, but I'm the chair.